Welcome, everybody. Tonight we continue chapter 4 and 5, and this will be part 2. And we recall in Revelation 4:1, after this I looked and saw a door having been opened in the heaven. And the first voice which I heard was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, "Come up here, and I shall show you what has to take place after this." So as we continue looking at Revelation 4 and 5, I want us to be mindful of doors in general. We know Yahusha HaMashiach is the door. We know he tore down the partition of separation that was guarded by the cherubim when Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 24, it reads, "And he drove the man out, and he placed cherubim at the east of the Garden of Eden, and a flaming sword which turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life." I'm sorry, what? The way to what? What did I read? To guard the way to the tree of life. Because of Yahusha, we now know we are the temple of his Ruach HaKodesh. Now we are commanded to guard, stand vigil, watch, and pray over our bodily temple that houses the Ruach HaKodesh, the tree of life that indwells in us. We read in Luke chapter 12, verse 37 through 40, "Blessed are those servants whom the master, when he comes, shall find watching. Truly I say to you that he shall gird himself and make them sit down to eat, and shall come and serve them. And if he comes in the second watch or in the third watch and find them so, blessed are those servants. And know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief comes, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into. And you then be ready, for the Son of Adam is coming at an hour you do not expect." Focus on verse 39. It said, "And know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief comes, he would have watched. He would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into." We are living in the hour the thief comes. How do we know that? Because we have been watching and standing vigil and staying in his word. And we see the signs. We are living in the hour the thief comes. And because of that, we have not allowed our house, our bodily temple, we have not allowed our house to be broken into. We have not allowed the thief to enter into the door of our temple. And we are seeing the door of people's bodies be entered by the thief with the V. In our Daniel study, we looked at the one new beast man rising versus Yahweh's one new man rising. We saw Nebuchadnezzar's statue reflecting the earthly kingdoms of the beast man rising, the worldly man. In contrast, we saw Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, the one new man in Yahuwah rising, temple man. In Genesis 25, verse 23 through 26, we recall where it reads, and Yahuwah said to her, Rebekah, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 people shall be separated from your body, and one people shall be stronger than the other, and the older serve the younger. And when the days were filled for her to give birth, and see, twins were in her womb. And the first came out red all over, like a hairy garment. So they called his name Esau. And afterward, his brother came out with his hand holding onto Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. So we see the beast man rising. Their color is red, blood red. And we see those born from above, Israel, temple man, Yahweh's one new man, his firstborn son, Israel, also is rising. Now, I'm just going to share 5 minutes of this video clip. But with this 5-minute video clip, you are going to see how they are having the new beast man, the one new beast man, if you will, rise.
The goal of creating artificial intelligence was for them to become gods, to create a collective mind, a global computer that sees all, sees everything, to create an all-seeing eye.
They can literally plug you into the internet, which is just to give you a very simple way of understanding that. And what that scientist there is describing now is the hive mind. Now, if people think this is somehow sci-fi or conspiracy theory, they're absolutely wrong, and they're way behind this, because this is here now. It's been done. It's been done in experiments, and it's been proven to work. And this is the technology. This is the first phase of technology that's going to come after the kind of AI goggles, you know, the kind of Google virtual world stuff. After that is coming this stuff, and this is going to come in a lot sooner than you think. And quite frankly, it terrifies me.
The brain creates, builds a version of the universe and projects this version of the universe like a bubble all around us.
We want to be able to use those parallel universes to compute things that then come back and affect us and answer questions in ours. We want to grab those parallel realities from this abstract space in which they live and crunch them down into this chip.
Everything connected to the internet will be connected to the mirror world, and anything connected to the mirror world will see and be seen by everything else in this interconnected environment.
We have to embody all our data and all our knowledge into a working model. It's like a Noah's Ark, it's like an archive. So the way we're going to do that is to build a kind of Microsoft for the brain, or Google for the brain, where we're going to bring all the information that we have ever accumulated on the brain and bring it, upload it into this environment, organize it, and then we're going to develop algorithms that connect all of this data. We'll be able to start exploring and get inside the brain. You see, today I cannot get inside your brain to see how it works. I can measure it from the outside, but I can't get inside and look at what you see. But with this, you'll be able to step inside a brain and look at how it builds a world.
This was a white paper put out by Purdue University in 2006, and the Sentient World Simulation, SWS, went live in 2007, which represents every person on the planet within this computer matrix as a node, and every node is given an avatar, an identifier. And that is real-time, 24/7 monitoring of every person on the planet.
The way it works is a device broadcasts a radio frequency, let's say at an individual, and that radio frequency will hook up with the resonant frequency of the individual's mind or body, or in this case, DNA.
And they do this by contracting with labs like LabCorp, Quest Diagnostics, etc., who provide lab services for employers, and also The involvement of sperm banks was mentioned in some of the information I saw working for my company. These are perfect ways to acquire an individual's DNA, build a DNA profile on them. And then this information, the DNA of the individual, is used to determine the resonant frequency of the DNA itself. The resonant frequency is then used to fine-tune the technology, the radio frequency signals, the microwave auditory effects, and all the other aspects of the technology to tune it perfectly to the resonant frequency of the targeted individual's DNA. And based on some of the scientific papers that I've seen written on this, this is possible and it is going on. But it is a lower form of the technology. It is a less advanced form of the technology. The true holy grail in terms of this technology is DNA resonant frequency. It taps right into the DNA and it does it remotely by resonating with the exact frequency that your DNA resonates.
What they do is they get your DNA, and then once they've got your DNA sequence, they can then go to a supercomputer and they can biocode directed energy attacks that will only go and bioresonate with your body. So that 3 people can be standing right next to you and nobody's going to feel the harassment except you, because these signals are biocoded to your body's tuning only. And then they can send down V2K, they can send down any symptom they want, because they're in full control of the bioresonance of your bioenergy.
And what happens is, once the resonant frequency is found in the targeted individual and the broadcast frequency matches up with that resonant frequency, those two frequencies interlock and they can be thought of as one frequency or one energy. And what happens is, between the broadcast frequency and the individual that's receiving the broadcast frequency, once it's resonating, once they are resonating together, a super highway of frequency along which information can be sent is created. And so you can think of it just like fiber optic cables that you use to send signals over the internet that connect people to the internet. It's the exact same thing, only a wireless application of that. And so once you have connected the targeted individual with the frequency and they resonate together, then you'll have a perfect avenue upon which to send and receive information back and forth. And that's exactly how they manipulate someone's thoughts. They send voices into someone's head. They manipulate their emotions. They manipulate their behavior. And then that's also how they receive back from the individual in real time the vital signs, the emotions, the thoughts, what the person's seeing, what the person's hearing. And then all that information, of course, is rendered on a computer elsewhere via software, and it can be monitored and tracked in real time.
So the world is raising up a hive mind beast man, but praise Yah, we are covered with the full armor of Yahweh, and we have the helmet of our salvation to protect our minds. And we have the mind of Yahusha HaMashiach, and we follow the will of the Father, and we carry out the fruit of the Spirit. So these two entities, the beast man rising and Yahweh's one new man, Israel rising, is what the book of Revelation is all about. And we know who wins. Yahusha HaMashiach, King of Kings, and we are one in him as he is one in the Father, and they are in us. So Satan's beast kingdom intertwines to form the one world order, one world religion, sun day worship. As mentioned, their color is red, blood red, representing Satan as well as Esau. His other name was Edom, red. And Yahweh's kingdom is life, and life more abundantly. The 4 living creatures in Revelation 5 not only represent the 4 lead tribes of the 12 wilderness encampments, but also the 4 covenant confirming gospel accounts that reflect Yahusha HaMashiach's characteristics. We read about the birth of the one new man in Genesis 32, verse 28. And he said, your name is no longer called Jacob, but Israel, because you have striven with Elohim and with men and have overcome. And the very name Israel that he has bestowed on us means to strive with El, to overcome with El, to rule with El. Genesis 25:30, and Esau said to Jacob, please feed me with that same red stew, for I am weary. That is why his name was called Edom. So we see the beast man rising. We see the different animals reflected in the beast man rising, the nations rising, the worldly people in the nations rising. So when we see these four living creatures, we should not find them strange. They too represent people. They represent believers in Yahusha HaMashiach. Genesis 35:10 and 11. And Elohim said to him, your name is Jacob. Your name is no longer called Jacob, but Israel is your name. So he called his name Israel. And Elohim said to him, I am El Shaddai. Be fruitful and increase. A nation and a company of nations shall be from you, and sovereigns come from your body. This is just a pictorial graphic of how the enemy counterfeits everything that Yahweh does. Esau is hidden in the one new beast man rising. He's the puppeteer behind the puppet that we see on a day-to-day basis, behind many advancing this beast man system. And we see this depicted in this graphic, but I show this only to show the comparison between the encampments around the dwelling places and the encampments around the square cube in Mecca. You can see all the people almost look like just little dots, little dots. So all man-made religions have been entered, have been corrupted, and have been blended with some truth and with lies. But with Yahweh, we focus only on truth. Now, this week, Mary sent me a text or she called me and she said, Libby, I was watching TV and this news advertisement came on. And this is a very short clip. She videotaped it with her phone. So the audio is not going to be very good, but really you don't really have to hear the audio. But what is important is towards the end, it's only about 1 minute long, you're going to see the patch that is coming down the pike.
An infectious disease, they go in there, that door stays locked. The National Desk delivers America's news now. The wind is going faster than we are. Immediate. We can distribute this worldwide, globally.
There it is.
Very quickly.
Impactful.
There it is. The patch. She called and she said, Libby, they're showing the patch on TV. I said, really? And so I did a little research just to see where they're at with the patch, because we were already informed that the vaccines, the injectable vaccines, were meant to fail. They were meant for people to start crying out for an easier system. You know, give us something more simple. Give us something with less side effects. Give us something so we can go back to normalcy. Well, the patch is what their ultimate goal is and was. I did find an article, April 29th, 2020. It talks about COVID-19 vaccine with patch delivery technology enters preclinical testing at UC Davis. That's over there to your right. And then from January 2021, it says jab happy. New COVID vaccines in pill, patch, and nasal spray form will speed up rollout, says former jabs chief. So, and then also I noticed the name to the left, Novavax. Well, you know, with the enemy, they always practice sigil magic. And if you spell Nova backwards, it means Avon. And it seemed to me that I recalled Avon having some type of occult connection. I couldn't pinpoint it exactly, but I did a search. And what was interesting was I found this that came up on Wikipedia. But it was from May Benagi World Wiki, is brought to you by Cody C. Our other patrons and contributors like you. Want to make the wiki better? Contribute towards getting larger projects done on our Patreon. So apparently this is someone submitting to wiki some information about Avon. And what I can tell is that maybe this is some type of video game, but it was interesting what I read. Under description, it says Avon used to be the city of Partholons on the Ulade continent. However, the residents of Avon angered the gods, so they sent a plague that killed all of them. Afterwards, the gods moved Avon into another dimension and used the city as a place of exile for the gods that committed crimes. Avon is known to serve as a jail for the Melanchthon Shakespeare who defied the gods. Players may only arrive here by using the Avon feather, which is obtained during Generation 13. So Novavax was interesting. There is more connection to Avon. It kept on bringing up the Satanic Bible too. So, but I'll leave that as it may. I'm not going to chase down that rabbit hole, but to know that things are unfolding as we were expecting them to unfold. We had been informed, we had been awake, we had been watching, and now it's materializing. So make no mistake, our journey has brought us to the last 14 campsites of the first Exodus. We know that there were 42 campsites after they left Egypt. We are entering and are in the book of Revelation, and we will be experiencing the last 14 campsites. Now, be very mindful. Most people in the traditional church setting probably have never even made it hardly to the first campsite. They are still thankful being at the foot of the crucifixion tree, having been washed by the blood of the Lamb, and hallelujah for that. But only Israel, those that know that they are Israel will recognize and appreciate the campsites, because the greater Exodus is going to be modeled after the first Exodus. These campsites are uncharted territory for most believers. What we are about to enter into is uncharted territory for most believers. Why? Because they do not only require physical, emotional, and spiritual perseverance, but also warrior skills in spiritual warfare. For we do not battle against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, rulers of darkness and spiritual wickedness in heavenly places. We make up the one new man, Israel, born from above, and we battle against the beast man rising, Esau, Edom, those that refuse to believe in Yahuwah, the one true Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and his only begotten son, Yahusha HaMashiach, Jesus, the Messiah. Now, anyone that is still in the worldly system, they still have time to repent and give their life to Yahusha HaMashiach. So right now there's still time, and may people wake up before it's too late. Now let's listen to the reading of Revelation chapter 4.
After this I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven. And the first voice, which I had heard speaking to me like a trumpet, said,
"Come up here, and I will show you what must take place after this."
At once I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne stood in heaven, with one seated on the throne. And he who sat there had the appearance of jasper and carnelian, and around the throne was a rainbow that had the appearance of an emerald. Around the throne were 24 thrones, and seated on the thrones were 24 elders, clothed in white garments, with golden crowns on their heads. From the throne came flashes of lightning, and rumblings and peals of thunder. And before the throne were burning 7 torches of fire, which are the 7 spirits of God. And before the throne there was as it were a sea of glass, like crystal. And around the throne, on each side of the throne, are 4 living creatures, full of eyes in front and behind. The first living creature like a lion, the second living creature like an ox, the third living creature with the face of a man, and the fourth living creature like an eagle in flight. And the 4 living creatures, each of them with 6 wings, are full of eyes all around and within. And day and night they never cease to say,
"Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come."
And whenever the living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to him who is seated on the throne, who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before him who is seated on the throne, and worship him who lives forever and ever. They cast their crowns before the throne, saying,
"Worthy are you, our Lord and God, to receive glory and honor and power. For you created all things, and by your will they existed and were created."
We are one with Yahusha HaMashiach. That's why it is so important for us to understand what John the Revelator was looking at when he said, "After this I looked and saw a door having been opened in the heaven." We have to remember that that was the partition of separation that we just read about in Genesis that kept Adam and Eve away from the tree of life. Yahusha HaMashiach is the tree of life, and he is the door. He is the only one that could have opened the door in heaven. And John the Revelator heard the first voice, which he heard was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, "Come up here and I shall show you what has to take place after this." And immediately I came to be in the Spirit and saw a throne set in the heaven, and one sat on the throne. So where was the first camp of the Israelites as they came out of Egypt? It was Sukkot. And where will the first camp be when we come out of Egypt? Again, it will be Sukkot. But in his word, I not only see an earthly gathering at Sukkot, but I also see a heavenly gathering at Sukkot. So when does all this happen? Well, it happens when one crosses over by grace through faith in Yahusha HaMashiach. And as I mentioned before, not all make it through the 42 campsites. Not all even understand they are Israel, born from above. Not all understand the difference between Israel born from above and the Israel in the Middle East. Overcomers are militarily ready. They belong to a tribe. They understand the importance of unity and obeying their commander in chief. And most importantly, they know they are Israel. So is there a Sukkot on earth and in the heavenlies? I see in his word that there clearly is. Now, we know when the woman is given 2 wings as an eagle and flown to the wilderness for a times, and half a time, that may very well be her Sukkot. And from there, she will be a mighty witness. But others may experience the heavenly Sukkot when they take their last breath on this earth. Now, some may disagree, but right now we understand and know we are his kingdom of priests from every tongue, tribe, people, and nation. And we will see these redeemed souls praising the Lamb in the heavens as he begins to open the 7 sealed scroll. They're already there, and the scroll has just been handed to him to open. They are singing the song of the redeemed. They have entered through the door to the tree of life. And we know no one entered the heavenly throne room, but until Yahusha, the tree of life, had opened the door in Revelation chapter 4, verse 1. Now, keep in mind, there is a huge difference between the dead, and those that die in him yet live, and those that believe in him, though they die, never die at all. And that is paraphrased from John 11, which we will look at more closely. And those are the words of Yahusha, not of Libby. In the book Called to Canaan by Danette Davis and Shauna Manfordine, we read, the bondage of Egypt behind them and their bread dough wrapped in women's aprons, the tents and tired nomads set up their first camp at Sukkot, meaning temporary shelter or booths. Transition. It's a place of transition. Sukkot in the Egyptian language stood for the place of transition, the coming out of darkness into the dawn of a mysterious new beginning. In Hebrew, this name stands for a quick rise from the lowest level to the highest. Not only had the new nation moved quickly from a low state to the fear of YHWH is the beginning of wisdom state, a very high one, but we too move from a lost in slavery state to a state of being free in Yahusha when we begin the spiritual exodus. So Sukkot's meaning means a temporary shelter, booths, place of transition, coming out of darkness, coming into the light, dawn, coming into a mysterious new beginning, rising from the lowest level to the highest. He came to set the captives free, and he led captivity captive. Hallelujah. And also, this little excerpt mentioned a spiritual exodus. That spiritual exodus occurs at the time a believer receives Yahusha and they become a new creature. Be mindful of that. They become a new creature. And how does one become a new creature? By Yah touching their very DNA. His name is on our DNA. We become a new creature. And it gets even better, I believe, when believers take their last breath on this earth and we are gathered to our people, Israel, to our individual tribes, or priestly position, just as Moses and Aaron were. At Sukkot, they are organized in tribes, warriors, and priests, yet they make up the one new man, born from above, with a unified purpose as their King of Kings, their commander-in-chief, leads and guides them. So previously, last week, I mentioned the way you view what happens to a person after they die totally changes and affects how you perceive the book of Revelation. So tonight I'm presenting that upon a believer's death, they cross through the door into life. This is prior to receiving their glorified resurrected bodies. Their first spiritual campsite in the heavenlies seems like it's Sukkot. Redeemed souls need a dwelling place in the interim. I believe that to be their temporary, repeat, their temporary dwelling place for the souls of the redeemed being beneath his wings of the four living creatures, which are seraphim that coalesce and house the tribes. They have the tribes organized, just as when they left out of Egypt on the first Exodus, the tribes were organized into their camps. And we're going to see this same picture in the heavenly realm. So this is the place of transition. This is also why these redeemed souls will receive their glorified bodies first, because they are in a temporary dwelling place, a transitional dwelling place. As with the earthly Sukkot, the tribes marched out of Egypt in military formation. They left their slavery mentality behind, and they moved into a victory mentality because of the blood of the Lamb. The death angel passed over them, just as believers are washed by the blood of the Lamb, and the death angel passes over us. Even the remnant still on earth reside in a temporary transitional dwelling place until we are all gathered from the four corners of the earth. In John 11:25, Yahusha said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he dies, he shall live. And everyone that is living and believing in me shall never die at all. Do you believe this? And each individual believer must answer that question. Do you believe this? We must understand that the resurrection and the life are not synonymous. They're two aspects of Yahusha. He is the way, the truth, and the life, and he is the resurrection. And he defined the term sleep. Sleep equates to someone that has died. Also, we must remember that the dead and believers that die are not the same. How you view what happens after we die, like I shared, greatly affects how you understand and perceive the book of Revelation. Do you soul sleep or do you live? Personally, I'd rather give Yahusha too much credit than to take away from him any aspect of his finished work. And I'm just offering this for people to ponder. It is through death which comes life. John 12, truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. He who loves his life shall lose it, and he who hates his life in this world shall preserve it for everlasting life. So pretty much everything set before us when we sit down to the dinner table to eat and drink, something has died to sustain our life. And Yahusha HaMashiach himself died so that we might live. John 3:2-3. This one came to Yahusha by night and said to him, Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher come from Elohim, for no one is able to do these signs you do if Elohim is not with him. Yahusha answered and said to him, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born from above, he is unable to see the reign of Elohim, meaning, as it's footnoted, or perceive the reign of Elohim. Tonight, we will be able to see the reign of Elohim through John the Revelator's writings. We will see and perceive the end from the beginning as we let Scripture identify Scripture. We go on. He is not the Elohim of the dead, but the Elohim of the living. Mark chapter 12. For when they rise from the dead, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as messengers in the heavens. And concerning the dead that they rise, have you not read in the book of Moses at the bush how Elohim spoke to him, saying, I am the Elohim of Abraham and the Elohim of Isaac and the Elohim of Jacob. He is not the Elohim of the dead, but Elohim of the living. You then go greatly astray. So that's Yahusha speaking. He is not the Elohim of the dead, but Elohim of the living. You then go greatly astray. And in Psalm 115, verse 17 and 18, the dead, do not praise Yah, nor any going down to silence. But we bless Yah now and forever. Praise Yah. So in verse 25 of Mark 12 that we read, where it says, for when they rise from the dead, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as messengers in the heavens. That is important. It's key to understand that they are as messengers in the heavens. So as we proceed through the book of Revelation, the word messengers can represent fellow believers or angelic beings. And John the Revelator is going to encounter both. In Deuteronomy 30, verse 15, see, I have set before you today life and good and death and evil. 1 John chapter 5, 11 and 12. And this is the witness that Elohim has given us everlasting life. And this life is in his Son. He who possesses the Son possesses life. He who does not possess the Son of Elohim does not possess life. Isaiah chapter 26, 14. The dead do not live. The departed spirits do not rise. Therefore, you have visited and destroyed them and made all their remembrance to perish. So we will know the end from the beginning. The patterns of the past reveal the prophecies foretelling the future. We see the pattern of the 4 encampments around the dwelling place, each quadrant consisting of 3 tribes, north, south, east, and west, with their lead banners, the lion, the ox, the banner, and the eagle. These same 4 living characteristics are portrayed by Yahusha in the covenant-confirming Gospels. There are also 4 rivers flowing out of the Garden of Eden. Presently, we see dimly in the mirror, but things are rapidly coming into focus, for the time is at hand. So in our study, I present my understanding of his word. But as I said earlier, it is the Ruach that leads us to all truth. not mankind. So Yahusha said he was the way, the truth, and the life. He said, I am the resurrection and the life. So in him, we have life. We have life now. For it is no longer we that live, but Yahusha HaMashiach that lives in us and through us. We have already died. But those that have not received him, that are living and breathing around us presently, they're actually the dead, the walking dead, if you want to view them that way, because they have not been born again. They have not been born anew. They have not been registered in the heavenlies. So in him we have life. The resurrection equates to the time when we will receive our glorified bodies, because the body for sure is in the grave. Personally, I do not believe our soul stays in the grave, because we serve an Elohim that doesn't mix pure and impure. He would not put a redeemed soul, a soul that has been washed by the blood of the Lamb, in with a defiled, rotting corpse, or in a mass grave, or sometimes there's not even a body at all. We have already been given the account of the first Exodus to know what to expect with the greater Exodus. We read in Numbers 10:11 that the Israelites' movement was based on when the pillar of cloud, meaning that was Yahweh in their presence, moved. And when the pillar moved, Israel would move. When the pillar stopped, Israel would stop. And this is very important. And why is it important? Because it tells us they moved and existed as one body with Yahweh. Though they were many, that made up Israel, they moved as one body, as his firstborn son. And we know that Yahusha is the head of the one new man. And we are the members making up every aspect of his body. But we are one. We are echad, one. Yahusha is in the Father, and the Father is in Yahusha, and Yahusha is in us, and we are in him. We are one. So in Numbers chapter 10, verse 11 through 16, we read, and it came to be on the 20th day of the second new month in the second year that the cloud was taken up from above the dwelling place of the witness. And the children of Israel departed, setting out from the wilderness of Sinai, and the cloud dwelt on it in the wilderness of Paran. Thus they departed the first time, according to the mouth of Yahweh, by the hand of Moses. And the banner of the camp of the children of Judah departed first, according to their divisions. And over their army was Nahshon, son of Amminadab. And over the army of the tribe of the children of Issachar was Nathaniel, son of Suar. And over the army of the tribe of children of Zebulun was Eliab, son of Helon. So this was the first encampment that would lead out. And when is this taking place? It's taking place in the 20th day of the second new month. So that time period should be noted. So this is the quadrant with the lead banner of Judah. And this is how many people were in each tribe: Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun, a total of 186,400 people. And in Numbers chapter 9, verse 11, on the 14th day of the second new month, between the evenings, they performed it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They ate it. So right before they headed out on the 20th day, they had observed the second Passover on the 14th day of the second new month. That's the second Passover there. Between the evenings, they performed it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They ate it. Next, as they broke camp, we read in verse 17 of Numbers 10, and the dwelling place was taken down, and the sons of Gershon and the sons of Merari departed, bearing the dwelling place. So after Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun, after this quadrant headed out, then the dwelling place was taken down. All the curtains and the silver columns and all of the coverings were taken down. So they followed after the first quadrant. That consisted of 7,500 people and 6,200 people that made up the sons of Gershon and the sons of Merari that took down the dwelling place. Then following them came the quadrant of Reuben. We read about that in verse 18 through 20. And the banner of the camp of Reuben departed according to their divisions, and over their army was Eliezer, son of Shedeur, and over the army of the tribe of the children of Shimon was Shelumiel, son of Surahadi, and over the army of the tribe of the children of Gad was Elisaph, the son of Duel. And so again, these are the number per tribe, and they totaled 151,450. Then next we read in verse 21, and the Kehathites departed bearing the set apart objects, while the dwelling place was set up before they came. So they had time, because the quadrant of Reuben was separating the dwelling place materials versus the set apart objects that would come behind the quadrant of Reuben. And there were 8,600 Levites that took care of the set apart objects. Next, we read, and the banner of the camp of the children of Ephraim departed according to their divisions. And over their army was Elishama, son of Ammihud, and over the army of the tribe of the children of Manasseh was Gamaliel, son of Pedashur, and over the army of the tribe of the children of Benjamin was Abidan, son of Gedani. So again, these were the tribes behind Ephraim, represented by the ox, a total of 108,100. Then in verse 25, then the banner of the camp of the children of Dan, which formed the rear guard of all the camps, departed according to their division, and over their army was Ahiezer, son of Ammishaddai, and over the army of the tribe of the children of Asher, and Pagiel, the son of Okron, and over the army of the tribe of the children of Naphtali was Ahira, the son of Enan. Such was the order of setting out of the children of Israel according to their divisions when they departed. So we serve a very organized Elohim. So this is the picture of Israel. And this quadrant had 157,600. So here we have the picture of Israel. This is Israel. This is the lead banners of Israel. The lion, the ox, the man, and the eagle represent thousands of Yah's people, Israel, his firstborn. And among them traveled the dwelling place carried by the sons of Gershon and Merari. And in their very midst was the set apart objects, the Ark of the Covenant, the menorah, the set apart objects were carried in their very midst. Yahuwah traveled with them by a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire. They moved as one unit with Yahuwah and with one another. Now, in the heavenlies, it's probably very different how they moved. They moved in a linear fashion here on earth. But what might it look like, and how do they possibly move in the heavenlies? The heavenly pattern was exactly followed by Moses. He too, like John the Revelator, probably got to see how believers in Yahuwah would one day be gathered into being the one new man. We know in the wilderness encampments, they would move out in linear formation. However, in the heavenlies, the four living creatures have 6 wings per quadrant for unit mobility. The 6 wings represent the 3 tribal encampments per quadrant. We are echad with him. He is the head. The souls of the redeemed are in temporary transitional dwelling place beneath his wings. The numerous eyes on the wings of the living creatures represent the living souls in his presence. Believers' souls would not be sleeping, in my understanding, in a dead, unclean body. Only the body of believers stay in the grave until the body is resurrected, incorruptible at the last trump. Their dead bodies will be raised first, those that have already died. Then the rest that are living will be changed in a twinkle of an eye. It is different for the dead. Their souls are in the torment side of Sheol, and their bodies will be raised during the second resurrection. In Matthew chapter 6, verse 22, we read, "The lamp of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is good, all your body shall be enlightened." So as we discussed last week, we know the 4 gospel accounts of Yahusha HaMashiach were also depicted by the 4 living creatures. The essence of the 4 living creatures are Yah's very character conveyed through the covenant confirming gospel. And so we noted that Yahusha is represented by the lion, the ox, the man, and the eagle. In the Gospel of Matthew, he's represented as the lion. In the Gospel of Mark, the ox. In the Gospel of Luke, the man. In the Gospel of John, the eagle. 2 Corinthians 5:17, "Therefore, if anyone is in Messiah, he is a new creature. The old matters have passed away. Behold, all things have become new." Isaiah 11:12, "And he shall raise a banner for the nations and gather the outcast of Israel and assemble the dispersed of Judah from the 4 corners of the earth." So last week also, we viewed the wilderness encampments. We noticed how the encampments almost look like little dots, little specks, or even eyes. And so we saw how Judah encamped to the east. The banner was the lion. Reuben, the banner, the man. Ephraim, banner, the ox. Dan, banner, the eagle. So in Revelation 4:8, "And the 4 living creatures, each having 6 wings, were covered with eyes around and within, and they do not cease day or night, saying, set apart, set apart, set apart Yahuwah El Shaddai, who was and who is coming." Psalm 91, verse 4, he covers you with his feathers, and under his wings you take refuge. His truth is a shield and armor. Isaiah 66, 15. For look, Yahweh comes with fire and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his displeasure with burning and his rebuke with flames of fire. So Yahweh travels with fire and with his chariots like a whirlwind. This is how he exists and travels among the heavens outside of time of our three-dimensional realm. In Psalm chapter 68, verses 17 through 20, the chariots of Elohim are what? 20,000. Thousands of thousands. Yahweh came from Sinai into the set-apart place. You have ascended on high. You have led captivity captive. You have received gifts among men, and even the rebellious, that Yah Elohim might dwell there. Blessed be Yahweh, day by day. He bears our burden, the El of our deliverance. The El of our deliverance, Selah. Our El is the El of deliverance, and to Yahweh the Master belong escapes from death. Excuse me, escapes from what? And to Yahweh the Master belong escapes from death. Second Kings chapter 2, verses 11 and 12. And it came to be as they continued on and spoke that, see, a chariot of fire with horses of fire, which separated the two of them. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into the heavens. And Elisha saw it, and he cried out, my father, the chariot of Israel and its horsemen. And he saw him no more. Then he took hold of his garments and tore them into two pieces. The chariot of who? The chariot of Israel and its horsemen. In Exodus chapter 13, and Yahweh went before them by day in a column of cloud to lead the way, and by night in a column of fire to give them light, so as to go by day and night. The column of cloud did not cease by day, nor the column of fire by night before the people. Yahweh is a consuming fire. And so I pondered, how might he appear? When he appears, some may see a meteor, but are we possibly actually seeing the chariot of Israel? Yahweh is a consuming fire. Exodus 24:17 says, and the appearance of the esteem of Yahweh was like a consuming fire on the top of the mountain before the eyes of the children of Israel. And in Deuteronomy chapter 4:24, for Yahweh, your Elohim, is a consuming fire, a jealous El. Deuteronomy 9:3, and you shall know today that Yahweh, your Elohim, is he who is passing over before you as a consuming fire. He does destroy them and subdue them before you. So you shall dispossess them and destroy them quickly, as Yahweh has said to you. Psalm 18:8, smoke went up from his nostrils and consuming fire from his mouth. Coals were kindled by it. Isaiah 30:30, and Yahweh shall cause his excellent voice to be heard and show the coming down of his arm with raging wrath and the flame of a consuming fire with scattering, downpour, and hailstones. Hebrews 12:29, for indeed our Elohim is a consuming fire. So let's review chapter 4. After this, I looked and saw a door having been opened in the heaven. And the first voice which I heard was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, "Come up here, and I shall show you what has to take place after this." And immediately I came to be in the spirit and saw a throne set in the heaven, and one sat on the throne. And he who sat there was like a jasper and a ruby stone in appearance. And there was a rainbow around the throne, like an emerald in appearance. And around the throne were 24 thrones. And on the thrones I saw 24 elders sitting dressed in white robes, and they had crowns of gold on their heads. And out of the throne came lightnings and thunders and voices. And 7 lamps of fire were burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of Elohim. And before the throne there was a sea of glass like crystal, and in the midst of the throne and around the throne were 4 living creatures covered with eyes in front and in back. And the first living creature was like a lion, and the second living creature like a calf, and the third living creature had a face like a man, and the fourth living creature was like a flying eagle. And the 4 living creatures, each having 6 wings, were covered with eyes around and within. And they do not cease day or night, saying, "Set apart, set apart, set apart El Shaddai, who was and who is coming." And when the living creatures give esteem and respect and thanks to him who sits on the throne, who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before him who sits on the throne and bow before him who lives forever and ever. And they cast their crowns before the throne, saying, "You are worthy, O Yahweh, to receive esteem and respect and power, for you have created all, and because of your desire, they are and were created." Now, there are several cross references in those verses we just read. Ezekiel 1:10 is cross-referenced. And the likeness of their faces, the face of a man, and each of the 4 had the face of a lion on the right side, and each of the 4 had the face of an ox on the left side, and each of the 4 had the face of an eagle. So at times they seem like they're merged together as one. And we know that the head is Yahusha, and we know Yahusha is represented by all 4 characteristics in the Gospels. And then we also see insights in Isaiah chapter 6, verse 2. Above it stood seraphim. So they're called seraphim, and they are his seraphim, and these essentially are his wings. Each one had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And also cross-reference was verse 3 in Isaiah 6. And one cried to another and said, "Set apart, set apart, set apart is Yahweh of hosts. All the earth is filled with his esteem." Now we move into Revelation chapter 5.
Then I saw in the right hand of him who is seated on the throne a scroll written within and on the back, sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice,
"Who is worthy to open the scroll and break its seals?"
And no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll or to look into it. And I began to weep loudly because no one was found worthy to open the scroll or to look into it. And one of the elders said to me,
"Weep no more. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has conquered, so that he can open the scroll and its 7 seals."
And between the throne and the 4 living creatures, and among the elders, I saw a lamb standing, as though it had been slain, with 7 horns and with 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. And he went and took the scroll from the right hand of him who was seated on the throne. And when he had taken the scroll, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each holding a harp and golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song, saying,
Worthy are you to take the scroll and to open its seals, for you were slain, and by your blood you ransomed people for God, from every tribe and language and people and nation. And you have made them a kingdom and priests to our God, and they shall reign on the earth.
Then I looked, and I heard around the throne and the living creatures and the elders the voice of many angels, numbering myriads of myriads and thousands of thousands, saying with a loud voice,
Worthy is the Lamb who was slain, to receive power and wealth and wisdom and might and honor and glory and blessing.
And I heard every creature in heaven and on earth and under the earth and in the sea and all that is in them, saying,
To him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be blessing and honor and glory and might forever and ever.
And the 4 living creatures said,
Amen.
And the elders fell down and worshipped.
And I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll written inside and on the back, having been sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong messenger proclaiming with a loud voice, Who is worthy to open the scroll and to loosen its seals? And no one in the heaven or on the earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll or to look at it. And I wept much, because no one was found worthy to open and read the scroll or to look at it. And one of the elders said to me, Do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, overcame to open the scroll and to loosen its 7 seals. So we are about to see all of this taking place. And this is what John the Revelator is seeing beyond the opened door. And there is much activity taking place. We read about the footnote scriptures in Genesis 49, verse 10. The scepter shall not turn aside from Judah, nor an inscriber from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him is the obedience of the peoples, meaning until Yahusha comes. And in verse 11 of Genesis 49, binding his donkey to the vine and his donkey's colt to the choice vine, he washed his garments in wine and his robes in the blood of grapes. So here we continue on with the footnotes. Let's first read Hebrews chapter 7, verse 11 through 17. Truly then, if perfection were through the Levitical priesthood, for under it the people were given the Torah, why was there still need for another priest to arise according to the order of Melchizedek, and not be called according to the order of Aaron? For the priesthood being changed of necessity, there takes place a change of law also. For he of whom this is said belongs to another tribe, from which no one had attended at the slaughter place. For it is perfectly clear that our master arose from Judah, a tribe about which Moses never spoke of concerning priesthood. And this is clearer still. If another priest arises in the likeness of Melchizedek, who has become not according to the Torah of fleshly command, but according to the power of an endless life. For he does witness, you are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. So now we exist with our high priest, Yahusha HaMashiach, and we are under his covenant Torah. And we read in Isaiah chapter 11, verses 1 and 2, and a rod shall come forth from the stump of Jesse, and a sprout from his roots shall be fruitful. The spirit of Yahweh shall rest upon him, the spirit of wisdom and understanding, the spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of knowledge and of the fear of Yahweh. There you go. There's the 7 spirits. In Isaiah 11, verse 10 through 16. And in that day, there shall be a root of Jesse standing as a banner to the people. Unto him the nations shall seek, and his rest shall be esteemed. And it shall be in that day that Yahweh sets his hand again, a second time, to recover the remnant of his people who are left from Asher and from Mitzrayim, from Pathros and from Cush, from Elam and from Shinar, from Hamath and from the islands of the sea. And he shall raise a banner for the nations and gather the outcast of Israel and assemble the dispersed of Judah from the 4 corners of the earth. And the envy of Ephraim shall turn aside, and the adversaries of Judah be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah not trouble Ephraim, but they shall fly down upon the shoulder of the Philistines toward the west. Together they plunder the people of the east, their hand stretching forth on Edom and Moab, and the children of Ammon shall be subject to them. And Yahweh shall put under the ban the tongue of the sea of Egypt, Mitzrayim, and he shall wave his hand over the river with the might of his spirit, and shall strike it in the 7 streams, and shall cause men to tread it in sandals. And there shall be a highway for the remnant of his people, those left from Asher, as it was for Israel in the day when he came up from the land of Mitzrayim, Egypt. And I looked and saw in the midst of the throne and of the 4 living creatures, and in the midst of the elders, a lamb standing as having been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of Elohim, sent out into all the earth. So the 4 living creatures are there. They're very present in the midst of the throne and of the 4 living creatures, and in the midst of the elders, a lamb standing as having been slain. So the 4 living creatures are encamped around the throne. And the 4 living creatures are made up of the souls of believers that have passed through the shadow of death. And the 24 elders are the ones singing. They are singing, "You have redeemed us and made us sovereigns and priests." So it is important to keep in mind that John the Revelator was looking into the future. He was looking at the day of Elohim, with Yahusha being the door that was opened in heaven in Revelation chapter 4, verse 1, because Yahusha had to enter first. Then believers that died before Yahusha, those that were in Abraham's bosom or in the comfort side of Sheol, entered after Yahusha. Of course, he led captivity captive. Those of us that die after Yahusha's finished work on the crucifixion tree are immediately gathered in his presence. The door is no longer shut, separating paradise or the comfort side of Sheol from Yahweh. As Paul once said, absent from the body, present with Yahweh. Non-believers remain in the torment side of Sheol and await the great white throne judgment. And as we've already mentioned, Yahusha is the resurrection, most certainly, but he's also the life. So believers' souls are redeemed and await their glorified resurrected bodies because they're in a temporary transitional state. And he came and took the scroll out of the right hand of him sitting on the throne. Now, he was the only one worthy. He was the only one worthy, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, to open the scroll. He possessed all the credentials to open this scroll. And what are those credentials? Well, they are recorded in Jeremiah chapter 32, verse 6. To be fully qualified, he had to meet all the transaction requirements, because he not only redeemed us, his bride, he redeemed the land and he redeemed creation. The transaction, this most important transaction, required the right of redemption, and 1 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 20 shows he was bought with a price, 30 pieces of silver. The bill of sale is indicated and evident by Judas being given a band of men and officers from the chief priest and Pharisees to retrieve Yahusha. The very deed was sealed with a kiss. The transaction was notarized in Pilate's court. There is also a public transference. The people chose Barabbas. Yahusha became accursed and shed his blood for redemption. The deed then sealed and placed in earthen vessel. So only the Lion of the tribe of Judah met all of these qualifications and requirements. Revelation 5 verse 8. And when he took the scroll, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, and each holding a harp and golden bowls filled with incense, which are the prayers of the set apart ones. So they're holding a harp and golden bowls filled with incense, which are the prayers of the set apart ones. See, I want us to visualize that our prayers are rising up from this earth into his very throne room as a sweet smelling incense before the throne. And the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders are very active in this whole process. It says they sang, and they sang a new song, saying, "You are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, because you were slain and have redeemed us to Elohim by your blood out of every tribe and tongue and people and nation, and made us kings and priests to our Elohim, and we shall reign upon the earth." Now, note, who are the ones singing? We just read in verse 8 that it is the 24 elders and the 4 living creatures. They sang a new song, and what they sang was, "You are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, because you were slain and have redeemed us to Elohim by your blood And who are us? Us is defined right there, out of every tribe and tongue and people and nation, and made us a kingdom of priests, or kings and priests to our Elohim. And we shall reign upon the earth. They're not on the earth right now, but we shall reign upon the earth. So these are the redeemed souls in those 4 quadrants singing the song of the redeemed. And they are from every tribe, tongue, people, and nation. Redeemed souls. And we presently are the remnant on this earth. And once we do receive our resurrected bodies, the new Jerusalem will be ascending from the heavens and will actually, I believe, hover right above the earth while we rule and reign with him 1,000 years. And it in itself will be a banner of his very presence. But at this time, everyone will have their resurrected bodies. So they will not be in that transitional state anymore, because now the new Jerusalem has come down. And as we reviewed previously, I just inserted the chiastic structure of the book of Revelation, and how we see the prologue and the epilogue have very many similarities. And we've gone over the 7 epistles, and then it matches up with chapter 17, the 7 angels and the whore of Babylon and the new Jerusalem coming down. The 7 seals, this is where we're at here in chapter 4, 3rd from your left, the 7 seals, and how it matches up with the 7 bowls. So you see how the chiastic structure mirrors one another. And the middle one reflects when Satan is cast out. And in verse 11 and 12, and I looked and I heard the voice of many messengers around the throne. So the messengers here are the angelic messengers. And I looked and I heard the voice of many messengers around the throne, and the living creatures and the elders. And the number of them was myriads of myriads and thousands of thousands, saying with a loud voice, worthy is the Lamb, having been slain, to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and respect and esteem and blessing. And every creature which is in the heaven and on the earth and under the earth, and such as are in the sea, and all that are in them, I heard saying, to him sitting on the throne and to the Lamb be the blessing and the respect and the esteem and the might forever and ever. And the 4 living creatures said, Amen. And the 24 elders fell down and bowed before him who lives forever and ever. So Revelation chapter 4 and Revelation chapter 5 is full of action, full of the presence of not only the Lamb having been slain and seeing the Lion of the tribe of Judah being able to open the scroll. We see the 24 elders. We see the 4 living creatures with the same depiction of the lead banners from the wilderness encampment. So the patterns define the pattern. The animals depicted by those 4 lead banners tell us who we're looking at. We're looking at Israel, and we're looking at the characteristics of Yahusha HaMashiach in the gospel messages, and they are one. They are one. But they're not to be confused with just angels, because the angels are identified here later on. myriads and myriads of angels. And there's also creatures. So we remember he's redeemed us, but he's also redeemed all creation, and he's redeemed the land. So these two chapters are so beautiful. I fall short of even doing this presentation to help us envision how much he loves us, how much he loves all creation, how much even the rocks would cry out if people did not praise him as Hosanna in the highest, how he even remembers the creatures in the sea. He is absolutely marvelous. All around us, we are surrounded, even in this fallen world, with the beauty of his creation, and we haven't seen anything yet.